So I have the tire open, and as I said earlier, I encourage you to have the wheel open so that we can get dimensions from this. Okay? Now, how should we make the tire? Extrusion or revolve? What do you guys think?
Wait, can you say the question again?
How should I start? And you're not going to do this in one feature, just to be clear.
No.
You're not making this all in one feature, right? You're going to use multiple features. How should we start? Extrusion or revolve?
Revolve. Wait, no. No.
What do you guys think?
I think revolve.
You think revolve?
Because you have to put the extrusion on top.
If you were to revolve this, what would you draw? What shape would you draw if you're going to revolve this? This is a basic shape. It's not a trick question.
A circle.
A rectangle. You would draw a rectangle, and then you would revolve the rectangle around an axis, right? Yes, yeah. If you were going to extrude this, what shape would you draw?
A circle.
A circle. Now, I understand that a lot of you said revolve, and that's fine. But an extrusion would also work just as well. Okay? An extrusion would work just as well. I'm going to do an extrusion. The reason why I'm going to do an extrusion is because an extrusion is easier. So make a sketch on the front plane. You should know how to do this. I have a sketch on the front plane, and I'm going to draw two circles. And these are going to be the inner and outer diameters of my tire. Are we good so far? Yes, say yeah, maybe. Yes, CJ. Don't die out there.
I will try not to.
Try really hard.
I will try.
Always are savage. You never know what's going to happen out there.
That is true.
Now, the diameter that I'm going to use for the inside, I am going to get from the wheel. So here is the profile for the wheel. Which of these numbers is going to be the inner diameter of the tire?
29.6.
Which one?
29.6.
No.
It'd be 36.9.
No.
That's out there.
14.9.
Well, actually, oh, hold on. Sam, yes,
Wait, what?
36.9.
Because it sits on.
Put the tire on the wheel.
Oh, shoot.
So these little nubs are what fit in that cavity. Yes. These little nubs fit in that cavity. So this dimension right here, this 36.9 that goes all the way to the outside, the rim of the tire is where the rim of the wheel meets it. Okay? So 36.9. I got that from my wheel part, so I'm going to go here, and I'm going to make a dimension for this inner one, 36.9. Now, I am not going to dimension the diameter for the outer one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my calipers, and I'm going to measure the thickness of the tire. Now, you need to be very careful when you do this. If you take your calipers and you squeeze down, it's rubber, it compresses, right? So you need to put it on there very loosely. This is not going to be the most accurate of measurements. Well, it is what it is. You also want to be mindful. You don't want to be measuring somewhere where your calipers are falling inside like a tread of the tire. Okay? So, I'm getting like somewhere around 3. All right? Ballpark-ish 3. Maybe I'll go over here, look somewhere else. That's like 2 something, maybe 2.8, 2.9. I'm going to go with 3. I'm going to err on the higher side because you can squish a tire, but you're not going to make it expand. And everything should be black, should be fully constrained. Do we have questions thus far? We're good? Those of you who at least are doing this. So I'm done. And now I can extrude this. Now, let's do something intelligent here. I want you to really look at how the tire is designed, and I want you to think about this. Aside from the fact that I'm going to put a number in, obviously, what might be some setting I do when I do my extrusion? I'm not going to just put in the height of the tire. Think about some of the options we've used when we've done extrusions that set ourselves up for success later. This is a general thing. It's not just to like this tire. When we would do sketches, we would choose to place things in certain ways. There would be some extrusions we would do that would set ourselves up so that it'd be easy to do things in the future.
Oh.
Yeah, you can go up and down. How do you do that?
Wait, like when you?
Well, you said go up and down.
No, I said up to that. I was just
Oh, well, yeah. How do you make it go up and down equal amounts?
Symmetric.
If you click on symmetric, okay, it'll go above and below the plane you drew it on equal quantities. Which, if you look at this, I hope you notice there's like a ridge line. You guys see that? It's almost like a little seam in the very middle of the tire. Runs along the middle.
Yeah.
You see that? So if we have the extrusion go above and below equal amounts, it's going to be easier to do that seam later. Okay? I am going to measure the height of what? What am I going to measure the height of? The what?
This part.
No.
What? Oh wait. What?
This is a trick question.
Oh wait, no. You go to the wheel.
Go to the wheel. Yeah, because even though it's less squishy, trying to measure this height, it's still squishy, right? So let's just do the height of the wheel. So what number should we use here?
Wait, no.
14.5.
So right here is the height of the profile, right? 14.5. So that's the number we're going to use. So I'm going to type 14.5. It's not going, just to be clear, it's not going 14.5 up and then 14.5 down. This is the total size of the extrusion. It is just shifted it to go up and down equal amounts. Are we clear on this? Maybe, hopefully, yes, yeah. To prove this point, if I turn symmetric off, the thickness didn't change. It just moves it. All right? And that's it. We're done. We're done. There's our tire. There's the basis of our tire. Now, if you did a revolve, you would probably do the tire and the seam together in one profile. But if you're going to do an extrusion, they have to be separate. So I'm going to label this the main tire because that is the main tire. So I'm renaming these two objects, the sketch and the extrusion, the main tire. Because that's what that is. It's like the main body of it. But I'm going to do this seam. If you know anything about how they make these, typically they use a mold and then they inject a liquid into the mold, and through either time or heat or chemistry or some combination thereof, the liquid hardens. Okay? So that seam is usually where the two molds meet. They have a top half and a bottom half, and that's probably where they met. Okay? So we're going to do the seam. We're going to do a sketch on the exact same plane we just sketched before.
I was going to say this is.
We're going to do a sketch on the exact same plane we just sketched before. And we're going to draw another circle. And this circle will be slightly smaller. So this circle represents that seam. Now, we can't probably use the wheel very easy to measure that, but what could we use from the wheel? If we were to make an assumption, it might not be a valid assumption, but if we were to use something from the wheel, what might we use from the wheel to figure out the size of that seam?
Probably the height difference from the rim edge.
Yeah, you could do that. So here, this 13.69 goes all the way to the very rim, right? And this 33.9 goes to the middle part, right? And presumably the seam and these nubs fit in that middle part, right? So you can make the assumption that they touch the inside. So we could use this 33.9. That may or may not actually be a valid assumption, but we're going to go with it. So I'm going to go 33.9. Okay? Where did I get that number? I got it from right here. It is basically how big this middle part of the wheel is. It's a little bit smaller than the actual rim. Okay? Presumably the seam and the nub fit inside that. Now it's rubber, so it stretches. So, who really knows, right? But we're going to go on that assumption for now. And we can extrude this. Now this is a dimension that's going to be a pain to get. Oh, I lied. We can't extrude it. JK.
Why not?
You don't have an outside for this ring. So you either need to draw another circle to the outside of this, or you can project it. We have projected before. I showed you this when we did the wheel. Okay? So I could draw another circle to represent the outside of this ring. It would lay on top of this. Or I can click on Use Project or Convert. This is next to the A, the text thing. And I can click on this inner wall of the tire. Notice that if I look very carefully before I click, I hope you can see that this is a thin black line and this is a thicker black line. I'm going to click on this, and now you'll notice that there's gray and the line's a little thicker. Here, before I did the project, it was white because it wasn't a bound area. Now it's considered a bound area when I project that inner wall. Okay, now we can do an extrude of that ring. Now, one thing that you might have an issue of is selecting it. So my recommendation is zoom in a little bit and hover your cursor in between. Okay. Now it looks a little funky, but that's obviously because we're not done here. You select the button first. It's right here. Did you click on this button?
Yeah.
Are you in the sketch?
Yeah. Wait, do I have to click on it?
Are you in a sketch?
Yeah.
Okay, you're in the sketch that you're drawing the scene, correct?
Yeah.
So it's not the first sketch we did, because the tire wouldn't exist yet. You click project, yes?
Yes.
And you can't click on the edge of this circle.
On the circle we drew.
Okay, are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm going to do my extrude. I'm going to zoom in, make sure my cursor's in between those two circles. So I'm clicking on the ring. I don't want to click on the middle like that. We don't want that. Okay. I'm going to click there. And I'm going to do symmetric. And the height. All right, this is a little tricky. Let's see here. Let's see. Let's see what our daily neuron count is today. How might we measure the thickness of that thing? Ooh. Because you're not going to get your calipers inside there. Hey, now, there's a caveat with flipping it inside out. It does deform the rubber somewhat. But, this is better than probably anything else we could do, right?
Yeah.
And that seam is probably not getting deformed very much. So, yeah, flip it inside out. If you flip it inside out, then you have all that stuff exposed on the outside. It's going to be a lot easier to make measurement. So, what I can do is I can take my hole depth gauge and I can measure the height of it, or I can use my regular calipers to measure the thickness of it. Okay? Hypothetically, if I use the hole depth gauge, I should get the number I already got. And if I use the calipers to measure thickness, you just need to be very careful. Just don't squeeze on it. Just kind of gently push it so it's about the right size. For me, it's looking like probably somewhere around 0.6 or something. I'm going to go with 0.6. So I have this very thin ring. I went with 0.6. And I did do a symmetric extrusion. Okay, so I have this very thin ring. And I'm going to call that the seam. If you did this as a revolve, you may have done these together. And there's nothing wrong with a revolve. I actually know that we will do revolve in another part, so I'm not really inclined to do revolve on this just for demonstration purposes. I think that doing extrusion here is good. Sometimes things that are circular, it really is better to just extrude. Just because it has radial symmetry does not always mean you should do a revolve. Okay? Now, we need to do our little nubs. I want you to look at those very carefully. I want you to think about what I'm going to draw. What shape am I going to draw?
Rectangle.
No.
What?
Look very carefully. Very careful.
Oh, it's like a, I don't know. A trapezoid?
A trapezoid. It is. Actually, technically, it's not a trapezoid.
Oh, what?
Because trapezoids have straight edges. And this is drawn inside a circle. So its edges are actually going to be somewhat curved. But it's mostly a trapezoid. So that's what we're going to draw. We're going to draw a trapezoid. And then, what do you think we'll do to make all the nubs appear?
Here. No.
Here. Circular pattern. Yes, we'll do a circular pattern. So we're going to draw one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the intelligent choice of drawing one by an axis. That's always a good choice. I'm not going to draw a random one out here in Narnia. That's not, I mean, like, you can do that. But it's easier if you use axes, okay? It's just like in math class. If you can pick any number you want to work with, you're going to pick 0 or 1. You're going to pick an easy number, right? Okay, so we're going to draw, I'm going to draw it up here. I'm going to draw it up here. So I am still drawing on the front plane. I am not drawing on top of that seam. I am drawing on the front plane still. I'm hoping you're starting to see why I decided to extrude on this plane, because some of these things could not have been done with circular revolves. They would have had to have been done with extrusions, this being one of them. Okay, so I am going to do the nub on this plane. And what's going to be interesting is, even though I'm doing it on this plane, it's going to look like I'm drawing on this shape. So if I don't do this, just watch. If I draw a line here, okay, it does, even though the line is running through, I don't know if you can see that, even though the line's running through the solid object, I can still see it. Okay, even though it's not on top, it's actually inside the object, I can still see it. So this works, okay? This does work. I am going to draw a trapezoid, but I am going to only draw straight lines for the sides. So my recommendation would be to use project first to project the inside and the outside. Okay, so I projected this edge and this edge right here. Okay.
What? Oh, you did the inside.
I projected this edge of the seam and then this inside edge of the seam. Okay. So this top line, I have this at an angle. This top line and this bottom line are the actual edges of the physical three-dimensional seam. This middle line is the result of me projecting that seam to the plane, which happens to be in the middle. We understand? Yes, say yeah? Okay. So I am going to go back to having this squared up. Because I've now drawn by projection those circles, I can now draw straight lines that connect them. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw a straight line here. Be very cognizant of your auto constraints. The only auto constraint that you want is a coincident constraint that just locks the endpoints of the lines onto some existing geometry. Don't accidentally apply a perpendicular or parallel or vertical or horizontal constraint. We don't want any of that. Okay, what constraint should we apply? There's multiple constraints we could apply. What do you think we should do here? All right, I think an equal is a good start. this is a symmetrical trapezoid thing, right? So equal here to here. They should be the same length. Now, that is not enough to get them to be symmetrical. There are multiple ways you could do this. My preferred way, especially in a situation like this, would be to do, as suggested previously, horizontal. If you do a horizontal constraint, you line the tops of these line segments with each other, and then you align the bottoms of these line segments with each other. And that should be lined up. Strictly speaking, if you do the maths in your mind, in theory, you don't actually, I don't even think you have to do the horizontal for both top and bottom. You can probably get away with just one side, but I did it for both. Okay? And you can see that they mirror each other. However I move one, the other one moves with it. Okay? Power of constraints. Now, how am I going to measure things? What am I going to measure? So, flipping it inside out was a big brain idea. You flip it inside out, you can make these measurements, right? They may not be perfectly accurate because when you flip it inside out, you're actually taking the stuff on the inside and you're stretching it some. So it's probably not going to be perfect. So you do you. I'm going to try and actually get the measurements without it inside out. But if you struggle with that, you can flip it inside out. Okay? A bad measurement is better than no measurement. So I'm going to try and not flip it to get a more accurate measurement. But if you're not able to get that, you can flip it inside out. So for me, the inside one, like ballparkish, I don't know, maybe 2.5. No. Maybe 2.4. So when you dimension, you can dimension between two things. So like I'm going to click on dimension, and I'm going to dimension from this point right here to this point right here. There's no actual line that's connecting them yet. Okay? So I dimension between 2 points. Then I'm going to try and measure the other side, what would be the outer side. I don't know. Maybe 3.1. It's hard to get an accurate measurement on that stuff. 3.1. Do we have questions? Okay. It's all black. That's good. That means that it's fully constrained. However, when I go to try and extrude it, I can't select it. Anyone want to take any guesses on why I cannot select it? There's not an enclosed shape. Now, this is going to seem really strange, but I never drew a top edge or a bottom edge of my trapezoid. I have a complete circle that goes all the way around, right? And I have these straight lines, but I never specifically drew a top edge. So I'm going to have to draw that. How might I draw that? It's not a straight line. You're going to want to use an arc. Okay? So we have right here, next to the circle tool, the arc tool. 3-point arc. Okay? 3-point arc. And there's other ways you can draw arcs. Okay? The 3-point would work here. The center point would also work here. Which one do you guys want to use? Either is valid. Which one do you want to use? You want to use the 3-point? The center you put the center of the arc first, and then you do the 2 endpoints. The 3-point, you do the endpoints first, and then you place the center.
Place the center last.
You want to place the center last? I'll tell you that it doesn't matter in this case. Some cases it does. This one it does not. So we can go with 3-point arc. So very easy. I click here. That's click 1. I click here. That's click 2. Now I got to place the center. Well, here's the thing, right? it's going to be aligned with this existing circle, right? Right? Yeah. Now I can't actually click on that circle, but I could apply a constraint that would make this line up with this circle. What constraint might that be? Yeah, tangent would work. Tangent would work. Now, for me personally, that's valid. It's totally valid. It was kind of a lot of work though, right? Because I had to apply a constraint. If I were to do the center point arc, where I place the center first, where would I place the center? I place the center of the circle. And then I could go up here, place my first endpoint, place my second endpoint. And that works. I should be able to select this maybe, if it lets me. It might not let me. It might just be a but. It's unfortunate if it is. Oh, I know why it won't let me select it. We'll get to that. I'm going to go back to this sketch though, and I'm going to reiterate my recommendation for you is to always adopt something that's simpler. If there's two equal choices in terms of their potential, adopt the simpler one. So for me, the issue I have, the 3-point arc, was I had to do an extra tangent constraint to line it up, right? Whereas when I did the center point arc, I didn't have to do that extra step. If you are trying to select that arc, okay, one issue you might run into is when you try to select it, it just lets you select the whole circle. So what you can do is you can right click on here and you can choose select or select other. Select other will bring up an option and it gives you like all these things that you can choose. Or you can right click and you can choose select and you can choose these like drop down. You can choose these like drop down buttons. Okay. If you're struggling with like what is selected, if it's orange, it's selected. Okay. So I hover over this, it's selected. Some CAD softwares, if you hover over it for a little bit of time, it'll have a tooltip come up and then it assumes you want to select something different. Although I'm not getting mine to come up. Unfortunate. Okay. We ran into this problem in the past when we did the cat. I don't know if you guys remember this. We ran into this problem with the cat. So when I try to extrude this, it won't let me select that shape. Okay? And part of the reason was because we didn't have edges for the top or bottom. But part of the reason also, I want you to think about this. The shape is inside this 3D feature, correct? So how are you going to select it? What did we do in the past? Because we saw this problem in the past. You guys remember what we did? Something like hide. It was not hide, but yes. So if I were to cut this shape in half, right, I would be able to see that sketch.
Section.
Yeah. So you can right click on the front plane. With section views, you need to always remember where you placed it. So right click on front view. Don't forget we chose front view. And you can choose section view. And now that sketch is there, and I should be able to, I can select that shape now. Well, I was able to select it for like a brief moment. It literally just flashed and let me select it. It's wild. Ah, it keeps coming up and then it disappears.
Move your section view back. That's why I didn't work.
You moved it. Did you move it lower?
Yeah, so it's still technically, I guess.
It might be covering it because it's the same plane.
Yeah, so I just moved it back a little.
What's interesting is I was able to select it for a brief moment and then it wouldn't let me select it again. Let's see if I can get it to come up. I'm actually wondering why it only comes up some of the time. That's crazy. See, this is to select other. See how it comes up?
Yeah.
Like I am able to select it. But I'm wondering why it was only, I'm wondering what I had to hover my mouse over to get it to come up because I was able to do it multiple times, but only for a fraction of a second. So I did the section view to kind of see it better. But this is another example of where that select other works. So I'm going to hover my mouse over where it is. I can see it there. There's the edge, right? I can see it. So my mouse is over it. If you right click and you choose select other, options come up and you can pick which option is correct. Now, the names are somewhat indicative, but the key is which one highlights the correct things in orange. For me, it was face of sketch 1. Highlighted the stuff in orange. I don't believe that would have worked, though, if we had not drawn those arcs. And I think it would have just selected the entire ring. So in hindsight, I showed you both ways. Let me go back to how it was. In hindsight, going back to this sketch here, we did this both ways. I did the arc on the bottom. Using the 3-point arc method, which required us to apply a tangent constraint. So it looks like the center point arc would have been better. But you do want to use good form, if nothing else, to have those arcs there as opposed to just leaving those circles. And so once I drew that, I used a center point arc. I went, put a center here, and then I use these points as endpoints. Once I did that, okay, and I had my nub, you have to go and select that sketch first. And it's a little tricky to select that sketch. If you go to extrude, it won't let you select it. Okay, you can't click on it. I don't even know if select other worked without that section view. I don't think that it does. It might. Oh, it does actually. Well, Entree's better than last time. But the section view is a tool that can help you see those things. And I mean, the section view did make it selectable. So you could also, like I said, the select other is really helpful. I personally find that select and choosing these things on the drop down is not very useful, whereas select other, I just hover over each thing until I see what I want. So face of sketch 1 was the one that worked for me. You can do that before or after you activate the extrusion thing. And then you can do a symmetric extrusion and you can get your width. I think for measuring the width, you probably want to flip this inside out. Okay. It's not going to be perfectly accurate. It is going to be a little distorted, but do your best. And so it's about 11 is what I got. And I have a nub. The key here is you have to use some geometry tools and you have to use some of the features in here to get what you want. The select other section views, okay? Use your resources here so that you can get the software to do what you want. What are we going to do now? Because this was my nub. I'm going to call this nub, by the way. What do you want to do now?
Circular pattern.
So a circular pattern. Patterns are usually very easy. Usually the thing that you're patterning, that's where the real work is. So once you get it made, usually the patterning is pretty simple. Especially a circular pattern, because with linear patterns, you have to like specify distances. With a circle, it just goes in a circle. So here's the linear pattern button. It's in between a cylinder-looking thing and the mirror feature. So linear pattern, click the drop-down arrow and choose circular pattern. What's the first thing we have to do? Yeah, it starts by defaulting to part pattern. You must click on that and choose feature pattern. And then you can either click on it here, or, and this is my recommendation, click on it in the menu, the table of contents on the left side. I would click on it over here on the left side. Because if I try to click on over here, I'm not really sure what I'm clicking on. It seems like I'm almost selecting multiple things and not really the thing that I want. So I'm going to click on it over here. And then I'm going to axis of pattern becomes red because it's telling me I need an axis of pattern. You could quite literally click on any circle, any one of these circles, literally any one of them. Now, how many of these are there? How many? Are there 15? There are 15. True gamer. Equal spacing, yes. And you can click on the green check mark, and it doesn't work. What do we need to do to make it work? Yeah, 95% of the time, if this happens, for whatever reason, and this is not just with patterns, just broadly speaking, click reapply and see if that fixes your issue. We are done-ish. We still have a fillet to do, and we're going to talk about treads, but you probably don't need me to do the fillet. And for the treads, I'm going to go over just some options for you guys, okay? I'm going to go over some options. So we are done for today.
Got the back